Hi, Martin.
Hi there.
Hi. So we are at the Future of Software Delivery event. It's a celebration of the 25 years of Agile, and we just spent a couple of days talking about what we think is changing. So, like from your perspective, what do you think kind of stays the same, and what changes as we go forward?
Well, I think one of the things that came through is many of the things that we've been talking about for a long time are still not just important, but maybe even more important with AI. The idea of doing small pieces of work, gradually adding up, and how to evolve that effectively is still very important. Testing and verification, because these tools are generating huge amounts of code, which is not necessarily a good thing, of course. The notion of thinking through that test verification process is really important. There is an interesting question as to how important clarity of code is. I mean, do we just assume the AIs are so clever they can read any mess? Or do we actually have to control things so that they can continue to understand what they're doing? My inclination is towards the latter, but I may be somewhat biased in that since I kind of like understandable code anyway. And then, of course, the generating a code is not necessarily the bottleneck for most organizations, as we know. So there's that factor as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. There was a lot of conversations about, the quality of the code when it's generated. Why do we care about quality? And why do we have verification? Things like that. There was, I think towards the end, we started to talk more about existing systems, right? And what do we do with existing systems? How are these two tools helping us with evolving existing systems? Could we let the agents swarm and fix and heal existing systems? So I think, again, it's that's new ways of doing things, but some of it's the same ways that we've done things before, but it's now more cost effective. It reduces risk. But I think there's also potential for just completely new ways of thinking about software as well. And I think we're still very early in that phase, right? One of the conversations I was in was that, do we even need source code anymore? Do we need code reviews? So I think it's really good to think about when we're asking these questions, why did we have those things in the first place? And does that problem go away with Gen AI or with agents? And if it doesn't, and if actually the problem gets exacerbated, maybe those fundamentals are actually even more important.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to one of the folks who was an attendee, who was an SRE for a very large organization with a very big code base. And he was quite open. Look, I can't understand this code base. It's just way too big. But LLMs can be very helpful in navigating through that and getting me to where I need to be in order to solve problems. And I thought that's an aspect that's important for a lot of our clients, because a lot of the stuff that's talked about of AI still is very much the startup greenfield situation, and we're in the completely opposite world for most of our clients. And yet that does not mean that LLMs aren't helpful. It's just that they're helpful in different ways. And helping comprehend a complex mix of systems, which is what they typically have to deal with, that's a very useful capability.
I also thought it was interesting that because actually most of the stuff that we do, most of the stuff that organizations and enterprises actually struggle with is dealing with the layer systems, is that with LLMs creating the ability to generate code faster, is that we're potentially creating more and more code, more and more legacy, less and less things that people can comprehend. So one of the discussions that really stuck out to me is this idea of almost tiering software by risk and value. And could we get to a place, I know we've created a lot of visualization and comprehension tools, but maybe there's more that could come out around helping us understand the heat maps of systems and where certain parts of the systems change, where because we won't be able to make everything well written, well designed, where does it really matter and where does it matter less so? And I think that's a interesting to see how that evolves as well in the industry. Somewhat intentional entropy in other parts of the systems in order to prioritize good design in really important parts of the system.
Yes, because several people mentioned that they had experienced, doing stuff very, very rapidly and just getting themselves into a hole. And then they had to spend a lot of time cleaning up the mess. And actually, the LLMs can kind of help clean up the mess, but often it's better to have gone at a slightly slower pace, but been able to keep it more sustainable.
Yep.